When we arrive in Costa Rica, this phrase always shows up. So it got me thinking, what exactly is Pura Vida and why is it everywhere in Costa Rica? The literal translation of Pura Vida is pure life. But for locals, it could mean a lot more than that. It can be a way of saying good, nice, hello, or goodbye. Sometimes, even whatever. But it goes beyond just a phrase. For Costa Ricans, it represents a shared identity, a sense of optimism, and a uniquely positive outlook in life. But this phrase didn't start in Costa Rica. The term Pura Vida first appeared in the 1950s through a Mexican black and white film called Pura Vida, where the main character repeatedly uses the phrase to describe people and moments in his life. In that context, Pura Vida carried a sense of gratitude. The idea that even when things aren't perfect, life is still worth appreciating. Over time, the phrase made its way into Costa Rican culture, slowly spreading across society and taking on a deeper meaning, becoming part of everyday life and identity. And you can really feel that shift when you enter the country. The sense of urgency that I always feel in Canada slowly fades away. Things move slower, and you start to notice the details, like looking out into the jungle, spending time at the beach, or simply observing people. It's a different pace, and you begin to feel closer to nature. But that connection isn't accidental. It actually runs deep into Costa Rica's history. In 1949, Costa Rica became one of the only countries in the world to abolish its army. And that decision didn't just change the country's politics, it also reshaped Costa Rica's priorities. Instead of investing in military power, Costa Rica chose to invest in education, social programs, and its environment. Over time, that shift made nature not just part of the landscape, but part of the national identity. As a Costa Rican ambassador once said, "We are declaring peace with nature. We feel a strong sense of responsibility about looking after our wealth of biodiversity." And you can see that commitment everywhere. Today, more than a quarter of Costa Rica's land is protected through national parks, wildlife refuge, and conservation areas. Entire ecosystems are preserved not just for tourism, but as part of how the country defines itself. This deep investment in nature made ecotourism a key component in the tourism industry. We even experienced this ourselves when we've seen sloths, toucans, and leafcutter ants getting a glimpse into the diverse nature of the country's biodiversity. And when you start to connect all of this, you realize something important. Pura Vida isn't just a phrase people say. It's a reflection of the choices the country has made over time and how Costa Rica presents itself to the world. So if Pura Vida is a way of life, how do you actually sell that? To understand more about the Pura Vida mindset, I look at a few brands and see how they bring this idea into their designs. And the best way to start is right where we landed. When we arrived at the airport, this campaign from Costa Rica's tourism board welcomed us to the country. I mean, if you really want to understand the country's identity, you have to look at how it brands itself. For their tagline, they chose Essential Costa Rica. This tagline isn't just about tourism. It's about shaping how the country is seen globally, through its people, its values, and its connection to nature. They even emphasize this idea of Pura Vida in their messaging, positioning it as a reflection of their warmth and way of life. And you can see this idea reflected in their logo. It combines two different styles, a handwritten script for Essential and a sans-serif typeface for Costa Rica. The handwritten type feels human and authentic, while the structured type brings a sense of stability and trust. And having that meaning behind adds another layer to it that makes the brand more intentional. And you really start to see this come to life on their website. The site welcomes you to a huge Pura Vida greeting, and the phrase continues to show up throughout the entire website. What caught my attention was this carousel of the different regions of the country. Each one is introduced through large immersive images, jungles, beaches, wildlife, and it immediately sets the tone. You're not being shown locations. You're being placed inside an experience. And that pattern continues across the entire site. Everything is built around nature and their way of life, not as a backdrop, but as the main focus. Even in the smaller details like the bright colors used across the cards and the interface, you get that same sense of optimism and warmth. It's all reinforcing that same Pura Vida lifestyle. And when you look at their campaigns, they make it even clearer. They're not trying to sell you a place, they're selling you a feeling. And that's what makes this so effective. The brand doesn't try hard to convince you, it simply reflects what life already feels like here. Pura Vida isn't just being marketed as an idea, it's an actual experience. And what's really interesting is that idea doesn't stop in tourism. You start to see it in your everyday life, even something simple as coffee. Coffee and cacao are some of the most popular products in Costa Rica. And after visiting a few souvenir shops, we started noticing how much care goes into their packaging. We first saw this during a visit to a coffee and cacao farm. Here we saw how much Costa Ricans love their coffee and take pride in the cacao products they produce. In their shop, a lot of the chocolate and coffee packaging featured animals, jungle scenes, illustrated in a way that felt almost hand-painted. It didn't feel overly polished or corporate, it just felt natural. And that same idea kept showing up everywhere we went. In other shops, it was the same pattern: animals, plants, landscapes, and honestly, it works. The colors are bright and the designs feel alive. It's really hard not to pick something up. So I bought a few chocolates myself. One of them had a slot on it to remind us of the first time we saw slots in real life. And I've noticed a pattern here. These products aren't just showcasing what they are. They're showcasing the feel and aesthetic of the country. And a great example of this is one of the most well-known brands in Costa Rica, Café Britt. Now when you look at how they brand their products, you start to see a familiar pattern. Again, it all ties back to nature. For their coffee, you'll often see landscapes, people working in the fields, or scenes that highlight where the product comes from. It's not just about the coffee itself, it's about the lifestyle and the origin behind it. And when it comes to their chocolate, it takes a slightly different approach. A lot of the packaging features animals, paired with bright, vibrant colors and natural elements. It almost feels less like packaging and more like something you'd pick up as art. And that's a part of the reason why I bought this. I picked up this guava flavored chocolate, and the packaging really stood out because it feels like a souvenir itself. First of all, I love how these designers are not shying away from bold colors. You have this vibrant pink which contrasts with the blue butterfly, the blue morpho, which is an iconic butterfly we saw in Costa Rica. Again, it's doing the same thing, highlighting the country's biodiversity and tying the product back to its environment. So when you step back, you start to notice a pattern across all of this. They're not just selling products. They're constantly reminding you of where the products came from. The land, the nature, and the people. It all feels connected. And maybe that's why it works, because it doesn't feel like branding. It feels like a continuation of the same Pura Vida lifestyle. As designers, we always try to make meaning with color, typography, and visual images, but Costa Rica shows us that the strongest brands doesn't start with design. It starts with values. Because at the end of the day, Pura Vida isn't something you can design overnight. It's something that's lived over time. And eventually, it's something people want to be a part of. Costa Rica built something more than just a brand. It created a way of living. And maybe that's why it's so powerful. Because it's real.